Okay, so your 5-month-old baby is very busy. She's just waking up at night and she's busy between sleep cycles. So before she can go back into a deep sleep, she's busy. She's probably trying to practice all the new things that she's been learning that day. And just like you and I, if we wake up at night, and all humans wake up at night, so that's not the issue. She's just waking up. It's a normal thing to do. And then she's getting busy, and then she's wide awake, and it's really common for babies at different times to spend a lot of time awake in the cot. And I think if she's happy and she's not calling out for you, then it's best to just leave her to it, and when she's ready, she'll put herself back to sleep. If you keep going in there and trying to help her, then you kind of get in the way of the process, and so you might make her confused and she might think that it's time to get up, or if you pick her up, she might be confused when you lay her back down, and so that can make them more unsettled. So my advice is that you just leave her, see if she can go back to sleep by herself, and if you find that she can't and she's looking for ways to help her go back to sleep, then perhaps do some sleep learning and teach her to settle and resettle on her own. Hope that helps. Any tips? Obviously, I'm going to say the WOTBaby app or the WOTBaby Bible will help you with exactly this. So at 3 weeks, your baby's a newborn and still trying to get used to the world around them. Your baby's used to being tucked up in your tummy, nice and safe and secure. And we call it the 4th trimester. So your baby's trying to get used to and adjust to being in the world. And so Bub wants to be with you all the time. So the best thing to do is to recreate that kind of womb secure space by using things like firm wrapping, nice tight tucking into bed, darkening the room a little bit, using some music or white noise. White noise helps with newborns because they're used to that shh sound. And also to look at sleep like a process. So if you do want Bub to go to sleep in the bassinet, then spend a little bit of time helping your baby off to sleep with patting, shushing, dummy, those sorts of things, but don't expect your baby to just go straight off to sleep. And at 3 weeks, if they need more cuddles, it's perfectly okay. Probably just try and practice maybe 2 times a day, popping baby down into the bassinet. And just start from there. Your baby will settle a lot better in the bassinet as she gets older. Hope that helps. Yes, it's very doable. Absolutely. Siblings sleep very well together. What it is, it's more about you and how confident you feel. So if your 8-month-old isn't sleeping very well, then my biggest tip is to teach them how to sleep really well and independently, and then pop them into the room with their sibling. If you're confident and you know that Bub can resettle themselves, then you're all going to get a much better night's sleep. Whereas if your 8-month-old is still waking, need him feeding back to sleep, or a visit from you and dummies and things like that, and calls out, then obviously you're not going to be confident to leave them. So yeah, my best advice is teach them how to sleep really well and then put them together. The best time to switch to one is sometime between 15 and 18 months, but all babies are different. So I often suggest or recommend that babies stay on 2, I call it cot time because they don't always sleep, but 2 rest times during the day up until they're at least 15 months, but even a little bit older. But if your baby is resisting naps, like either the morning nap or the afternoon nap, and flat out refusing for a week or more, then perhaps it's time to change them to 1 sleep. Okay, so the sleep regression is not, I don't like to call it a regression, I like to call it a progression. It means that your baby's developing, and it's a really positive part of your baby's development. And so what happens is around 4 months is that your baby's sleep becomes more like yours. So if you look at it, think about it, when we hop into bed, we don't go straight off to sleep. We go through a myriad of different things before we even get into bed that settle us down. Then we hop into bed and we toss and turn, or we do what we have to do to get into a light sleep first and then a deep sleep. So your baby's doing exactly the same, and at the end of the day you would expect your baby to be more unsettled or to take a little bit longer at actually going off to sleep. They're winding down from the day's activities, and that's usually when they're overtired. So overtiredness plays a part in unsettled behavior. So I think the best thing that you can do is to make sure she's got a nice early bedtime, a really consistent bedtime routine, which includes a bath and then a feed and then a little bit of quiet time between the feed and going to bed. And then you pop her into bed and you help her go to sleep rather than putting her off to sleep. So if you've been using dummies or patting or feeding off to sleep, then now it's time to look at sleep like a process, and that she's going to spend time getting into light sleep before deep sleep first. So teach her how to do that, and she will start to, instead of crying, do other things like rolling around in the cot or moving her head from side to side or sucking on her hands or something like that. So yeah, it's just about looking at sleep differently, and you not putting her to sleep but helping her to go to sleep. Yeah, so that's why the dream feed's not working, because at 5 months it's not a dream feed anymore. So during the last question I answered the last question by saying that at around 4, actually it's 3.5 to 4 months, your baby's sleep changes, and it changes for good. And so our baby's sleep patterns change. They have to go into a light sleep first and then into a deep sleep, and then they will do that many times and cycle through these sleep cycles through the night. And so babies under the age of 3-4 months are in a deep sleep around 10 p.m. and we just have to rouse them enough to feed, and if we could ask them the next day, they would say, I don't remember being fed. But they have enough to be topped up, and then we can help them have a longer stretch at night. But babies who are older, as I was saying before, when they go into a light sleep, they're quite awake and aware of their surroundings. So sleep associations become a big thing. And so at 10 p.m, if you're giving your baby a 10 p.m. dream feed, even waking them up, they're not in a deep sleep at that time, and they're aware of being fed back off to sleep. So when they wake, which is normal, they're not waking for any particular reason, they're just going into a light sleep at those other times in the night, then they expect the same thing again to help them go back to sleep. So my advice is to get rid of the dream feed, start a little bit of solids during the day. If Bub's getting 4 good milk feeds, particularly if Bub's bottle fed, then they'll be fine on 4 feeds. And really I'd be looking at sleeping or being in the cot from 6:30 to 6:30. They can do it, they just need you to show them how. Okay, so 13-month-old, your baby needs a really solid routine. And these little toddlers, they sometimes don't like to conform, but it's really up to you to set the boundaries and to show them what the routine is. So it's not about up times, it's not about looking at your baby's tired signs, it's about you setting a really solid routine and sticking to it for a good while before you say it's working or not working, like say a good week. So a routine at 13 months, basically I'd be saying breakfast at 7, so up for the day, solids first, a nice big breakfast followed by milk feed. But at 13 months they don't really need 3 big milk feeds, but if you are still breastfeeding, a breastfeed after breakfast, and then some playtime, and then a mid-morning nap, or I call it cot time, and then up about 11, and then lunch at 12, and again that's a big meal of solids, dessert plus a milk feed if you want, and then some more playtime, and then an afternoon nap, and then afternoon tea around 3:30, and then a nice bedtime routine, dinner at 5, bath, milk feed if they're having it, and then bedtime books and things, and bed at 6:30. That would be a routine in a nutshell. Breakfast, lunch and dinner, afternoon tea, 2 naps a day. Oh, good question. I love this question because I'm very much about putting babies into a cot by about 8 weeks. If your baby's a big baby or not sleeping well around 7 weeks, I'd probably look at putting them in a cot now. So with bassinets, babies from about 4 to 6 weeks of age, they start to wake up to the world and they understand their surroundings, and by around 8 weeks they're very switched on and they're affected by stimulation. So when they move during their light sleep cycles or trying to go to sleep, they'll move and then the bassinet will move underneath them and around them, and then that stimulation stimulates your baby, so it makes them very hard. It makes it very hard for them to go back to sleep. So if they're in a nice firm sleeping area in a cot, more surface area, they're not kicking off the sides and it's not moving underneath them, they'll sleep a lot better. So I'd suggest you move Bub now if you've got a big baby. Okay, so you have to understand that your baby doesn't know what time it is. So you know it's 5 a.m., but your baby doesn't know it's 5 a.m. So the energy outside might be shifting, it might be light, or the birds are chirping, or you in your in your haste to resettle your baby because you want another hour's sleep, you actually take a lot of energy in there. And if your baby at that age gets a whiff of there's something going on or it's up time, then that's what they will want to do. So my advice is that you manage 5 a.m. wake ups just like you would manage a nighttime wake up. So imagine it's 2 a.m. and what would you do then? You would walk in, you wouldn't turn lights on, you wouldn't talk to them, you wouldn't give them eye contact, you would just go in calmly and you would retuck. And you wouldn't say much or get involved because you're going to be half asleep yourself. So you need to recreate that at 5 a.m. and really let them know that it's not time to get up, that it's not close to morning time. And yeah, treat it the same way. And then when it is time to get them up, you go in and you open the blinds first and you turn off the music and you unswaddle or take your baby out of their sleep suit in the cot and say good morning and let them know that that is when it's time to get up. Get them up and continue with your day. But if you go in there and fluff all over them for that hour in desperation to try and get them back to sleep, you're just going to keep them awake until they win and you get them up anyway. Okay, so this is a good question, and I know how hard it is having 3 children myself, so I did have that juggle. My advice is to teach your baby how to sleep when they are at home and to give your baby a good consistent bedtime every night and to teach them how to sleep well through the night and get really good restorative sleep. Nighttime sleep is the most important, and the earlier you can teach your baby to have long stretches of restorative sleep at night, the better they're going to cope with, disruptions to their sleep during the day. Another thing too is within the WOTBaby routines, I very much encourage that you put your baby back to bed within an hour of getting up in the morning. And the reason being is that sleep induces sleep. They'll go back to sleep a lot better and have a little bit more restorative sleep before you inject all this stimulation into them. So like sponges throughout the day. So get them back to bed, let them have another good solid 2-hour sleep before you go out and about for the day's activities. Or if you know that you've got to be out for that afternoon nap, make sure they get a good amount of time when you are at home. But yeah, just concentrate on that bedtime routine and nighttime sleeping, and Bub will cope with, he has to compromise. He's a sibling and there's no way around it really. Yeah, so the best thing to do is look at how your baby's going to sleep, right? So we tend to, and particularly if they are catnapping and waking up, they're on a perpetual wheel of tiredness. So the next time you put them to bed, they go to sleep really easily. So if you're helping your baby go to sleep, then they'll go off to sleep quickly, but then wake up that very first sleep cycle. So isn't it better to put your baby to bed wide awake and help them go to sleep without all of these associations? I like to put it into sleep cycles. So spend a sleep cycle winding down and going into a nice deep sleep. And then you'll find that once they are asleep, they've been in the cot for a little bit longer. And it's better to do it that way than putting your baby off to sleep and then them waking after 45 minutes screaming and not going back to sleep. So help your baby wind down and get into a nice natural sleep. And routine really helps with this by separating your feeding with sleeping, sleeping with feeding, and making it clear to your bub what time it is. And yeah, the windows of time will help you achieve this. Okay, so I don't know how old this baby is because Mum hasn't mentioned how old Bub is, but this is really common. And I'm guessing that she's got a baby who's around 3 to 4 months of age, and it's literally sleep changing. So babies younger than 3 months are in a lot of deep, you can put them off to sleep, they'll stay in deep sleep, and when they come into a light sleep, that, you know, if they're wrapped and the environment's right, they'll just go back to sleep. So they do tend to spend more time in deep sleep. Older babies, however, their sleep is developing, it's becoming more like ours. So if they go to sleep with association, or they're overtired, or they don't know how to sleep independently, then you'll find they'll do a lot of catnapping, they'll become overtired, and then that will continue on into the nighttime. So you need to work out where your baby's at, how many feeds they do need, and then teach them how to sleep independently. And if they can do longer stretches at night, then you teach them how to resettle, and then they'll do it on their own quietly. Okay, so my biggest advice is, and I'm so grateful that you've got the app, and that, you know, obviously if you're using it, it's helping you in some way. So I'm very grateful for that. But I think now what you need is the WOTBaby Bible, because it has, you know, the definite routines that are right for your baby within the Bible, and it will show you how to create this nice routine for your baby so that she does know how to self-settle and how to resettle. So, you know, regardless of what's happening in the night, you have to teach your baby how to settle and resettle during her day naps. That's when you need your baby to do the practice. So at night time, when they have the melatonin on board and it's dark and there's not a lot going on, she really shouldn't be crying for that long if she's learning how to sleep during the day. So the WOTBaby Bible will help you to problem solve. It'll help you to create the right routine for Bub, so that when she is in her cot during cot times in the day, she'll know how to settle herself and then resettle. And then that practice will continue on and set the tone for the night time. I'd also have to know a lot more about her bedtime routine, but if Bub's old enough, you can, you know, offer solids and things like that. But, you know, you need to have the confidence, and baby needs consistency. So you need to, you know, if you're trying for a couple of nights to teach your baby how to sleep, then everybody has to be on board. It's only for a couple of nights. You teach your baby how to sleep, and then everybody gets good restorative sleep. So it's worth a couple of nights. Do it on a weekend. It's worth a couple of nights of consistency. But unless you're consistent during the day, there's no point in doing any of it at night.